If you don't like the nerdy stuff, you shouldn't watch this video. Very, very short, and none of it's going to help you take a better picture, okay? Now, the video I posted last night about sensor size and total light, I still got a lot of pushback from it, and the statements that were made across several posters was, well, you know what, I stick the same lens on my DX camera. One example was a D7100, then taking the same lens and doing the same exposure, same ISO, and actually slapping it on a Nikon D810. Obviously, according to these posters, larger sensors gather more light because the exposure changes between the D7100 or a Nikon D810. Another example was a crop sensor camera and Nikon D850. Well, the fact is that the D850 is a BSI sensor, and a D7100 or D7200, which are both using the same sensor, are not BSI sensors, so it has a different architecture. And also, too, it has nothing to do with sensor size, it has to do with pixel pitch. I'd like to take a look at this chart right here. Here we got pixel pitch, right? These are right here, the IMX 425. There might be something slightly better than that. However, this was released in late 2018. Now, this sensor is only 1.7 megapixels, but look at those huge eyeballs, 9.0 micrometer pixel pitch. That's 3 times, it's actually over 3 times the size of the pixel pitch on a Nikon D810 or Nikon D850. Here's Sony talking about it and bragging about this sensor. Now, this is not for digital photography. 1.7 megapixels. Wow, that's a lot of megapixels. Pixel pitch of 9 micrometers. My God, that's absolutely huge. And of course, here's we got another website. This is actually Sensor Mag's article talking about the new Sony, and this is the IMX 425. I'm only talking about that one sensor right now. It's for high-speed factory automation, and also uses the backup sensors, I believe, for cars when you back up, especially in the dark. You know, when you back up, you want to see stuff in the dark. So it has incredible attributes for basically zero light. Of course, every sensor needs some light, but basically zero illumination. Now you see here on pixel pitch, yeah, on this IMX 425, this tiny sensor, now take a look at the size of it, yeah? Really, really, really small. So small, these sensors right here, they're so small they make Micro Four Thirds look huge by comparison. But one thing all these sensors have in common is, yeah, huge eyeballs. So, you know, larger sensors don't gather more light. When people say, well, when I use a full frame sensor camera, I have a different exposure, you know, it seems to have better low light gathering capabilities. One point is architecture, whether it's a BSI sensor, all right, or whether it's a conventional sensor. The other thing has to do with pixel pitch. These tiny little sensors, let me make this extremely explicit, these tiny, tiny little sensors, and they're very small, will absolutely blow the butt off of any digital camera out there. I don't care who makes it, okay? Canon, Nikon, Fuji, everybody. For low light capability, they will blow the butt off of everything else out there. These sensors are really, really small. Really small. But they have one thing in common. Huge, huge photo sites. And some of these are um, also BSI sensors. Actually, the BSI sensor. This is a non-backlit sensor. The backlit sensor chart is underneath here. Now let's go on to point number 2, since I made that amply clear, at least to anybody with ears. This is actually a chart taken from a Sony diagram. And of course, I've been making videos on this for a year, and I've actually done the annotations in red and blue here. This is an Exmor processor from Sony. This is off of Sony's own official techno jargon PDF. And you see here, what we have here is the sensor, right? Remember the ISO? People still think that ISO is part of exposure. It's not. I've been making videos about this for years. Here we actually have the raw signal, right? The raw signal, it's actually gathered off of the sensor, and the column blocks and the row decoders right here. We don't need to go into that technical detail. Then after the raw signal is been processed, it goes on to AD converter. That says the signal is digitized from an analog signal, because at this point, every camera sensor is nothing other than an ultra fine solar panel. But and like a solar panel, of course, we're talking about millions of different points of light of different color and different intensities, right? So now it gets converted to a digital, a binary stream of data. And here we have, now this is on the Sony diagram, they're calling it digital gain, but what this is this is the applied gain. This, boys and girls, girlfriend, is ISO. Right here, this little thing right here. You see this? Now this is the sensor, right? The image right here, okay, let's type this. The image right here has been captured. It's already been passed off, right? And here it's being converted. The image right here has already been captured. ISO occurs meow, meow, meow. Way over here. That means that ISO is applied after. Ha 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 ha. After the image has already been captured. Quite a bit after the image has already been captured. And it gets processed some more, and then it gets passed off to the main board for us in our firmware, processing and buffering transmission to the compact media cards, SD cards, whatever the case may be. So yeah. Yeah, here we go. This right here is ISO. Now, of course, not all sensors are the same. Actually, some actually apply. Okay, these are transposed. Some actually apply the digital gain before the AD converter, but most sensors, but Sony, Tower Jazz, and others, including, I forget the sensor company that manufactures them from Leica. They're located in Belgium, I believe. Some sensor manufacturers actually have the applied gain or digital gain, i.e. ISO, before the AD converters, but who cares about that nerdy garbage, right? The point is that ISO is not part of exposure because right here, the image has already been captured. ISO does not occur until over here. Yeah. ISO is not part of exposure. What is part of exposure is gain and time and SNR. Gain, of course, is aperture. Time, of course, is shutter speed. And SNR is that magical word in digital photography nobody talks about, which is signal to noise ratio. Right. That's also the reason why SNR, these tiny little sensors with huge eyeballs on them. I think eyeballs is really a best analogy. Have nothing to do with sensor size. Let's get this straight here. Tiny sensor, huge eyeballs. It's also, look right. It's a 1.7 megapixel sensor. These are for industrial use. They're like high-speed factory automations, backup sensors for cars. So they're not for photography, right? For industrial use. I think some of these are actually applied to robots for moving stuff around also. I think there's a lot of uses for these little sensors. Yeah, tiny sensors with huge eyeballs. Let's get this straight. Larger sensors have nothing to do with light gathering capability because the most sensitive digital sensors from Sony, for example, and Panasonic actually has an equivalent to this, but I forget what its name is. The most sensitive digital sensors that exist are really small and low megapixel sensors. Really small. Yeah. So I hope I made that very clear because you know exactly what I'm talking about. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.